My name is Robby Besner, and I am the co-founder and device developer for a company called Therasage. You guys, probably from the title on my speech, it's about BioPhoton modulation and nutrition. We'll touch on that a little bit. But today, I'm going to do a deep dive with everyone and actually offer you some of my secrets that I've learned over the last 40 years being an integrated health provider and biohacking for about that long. Before they even invented the word biohacking, we were doing it. I'll share some of those secrets with you, and hopefully some of them will inspire you so that you can incorporate them in your lives and just dial it up a little bit more, level up, right? That's what we're about. So this was me. Now I live in South Florida, and there they tell you don't go in the sun. They probably say that here or anywhere in the country because there are some elements of sunlight that actually aren't so great for you, and usually it's in the UV spectrum. And like in nature, there's a balance. And so the way that when the sun shines on the earth, that angle is called an azimuth. And then when the earth rotates, that's how we go into winter, and all of our seasons change throughout the year. So that angle and the relationship between the sun and the earth changes. And so right now in southern Florida, between the hours of 10 and 10:30 and about 1 in the afternoon, the UV spectrum, the tanning spectrum, the spectrum of light that actually creates natural vitamin D in the body, that's when it's most prevalent. And those are some of the frequencies that aren't so great for your skin and make everybody fearful about getting skin cancers and things like that. And we should be aware of it, getting overexposed to that. But like the balance of nature, after the UV spectrum, then comes the infrared spectrum, which are the healing frequencies. And so if you get overdone on UV and you stay in the sun long enough, you get balanced and healed with the IR. The problem with the world these days, probably not the world, but the people in the world, is we hang out and we get tan, but we don't stay around long enough to get healed, and so we don't have that balance. And that's part of what we're going to talk about today. So my world changed 24 years ago because my oldest child, my daughter Julia, contracted Lyme disease. And when she got sick, I decided to kind of retire from my active. My wife and I developed the first virtual medical billing and reimbursement company in the country. And so I took a little step back from that and started to do a deep dive in research and based on how my daughter was presenting herself, meaning what kind of symptoms how she was expressing her Lyme disease. And she had challenges with cognition, so she had challenges kind of focusing and brain activity challenges. She had body pain, and she had what I defined as high levels of toxicity and inflammation. So when I unpacked all of that, having a healthcare background, I focused on toxicity, and I did a deep dive as to the best ways to detoxify. And when I did that, we all know there's kind of dialysis, which they, stick a tube in you, they pull your blood out, they screen your blood. That's called invasive, meaning they're actually puncturing your skin. Then there's non-invasive ways to detox by potentially taking either a pharmaceutical, like a chemical-based supplement that will chelate and pull the poisons out of your tissues, out of your cells. And then I discovered that there's actually wavelengths of sunlight, the infrared spectrum, that when they come into your body, they create a vibration, which is called a bioresonance. I'm going to get a little nerdy here. You guys don't mind, do you? No. Okay, cool. All right. So that causes that vibration. That vibration shakes loose all of these poisons that are stored in your cells and in your tissues. And I thought that was amazing. So 24 years ago, I was one of the first guys in the country to stand on that soapbox on stage and be screaming out in my lungs to the healthcare community about the healing powers of sunlight. It's kind of innovative. Now we know red light and we know infrared and we know all this stuff because we're fast forwarding to today's world. But back then, there were a lot of negative Nancys that weren't quite looking at what I was looking at as alternative and natural healing in such a kind way. And the world in healthcare to be quite honest, was very dominated by medical doctors, allopaths, and they learned specific things in medical school. And they weren't really very open to alternative things then. But of course now we have integrated functional medicine doctors, and we have the allopaths, the MDs, that are kind of running out of playing field, and they're getting more open to alternative stuff, which is a joy for me, because I think that it's not just one thing, it's a combination of things that really makes it happen. So I discovered infrared. I discovered the healing powers of infrared. I organized a trip, and I went to China, and I spent 3.5 months there. This is 25 years ago. And I hooked up with 2 factories, and I started making infrared devices, mostly just for home use, for our use.
Did you make the hot house?
A hot house?
I think that's what it was called. It was a dome? I used one.
Oh, you did? No, but I like the idea, though. I did not make the hot house. There, I have my handprint on a lot of things, but that's not one of the things that I invented. All right, well, anyway, so I went to China. I started developing devices. Remember, back then, 25 years ago, we didn't have virtual doctors. We didn't have what we have today. What we had was, geocentric doctors. And in the Lyme community 25 years ago, there weren't many Lyme literate doctors, they're called. So we were living in South Florida, and the best Lyme literate doctor in the country was in New York, on Long Island. So every 6 weeks, we would travel up to Long Island and take my daughter there. She'd have her protocol tweaked a little bit, and then we go back down to Florida. And it quickly became apparent to me that when you have a chronic ailment, the onus on healing, you see your doctor for a half hour, an hour maybe. So the onus really is on the person that's sick and the family support around that, and then the community around that, right? And so when I kind of looked at that dynamic, I decided that to kind of step in, and being a homeopath, meaning I look at healing through like natural healing. Let me turn this off. I decided to really get active in developing this device, this harnessing infrared, and we brought it to the doctors because they were seeing, her collective doctors, she had a pain doctor. Lyme disease mimics many kinds of other diseases. I don't know, raise your hand if you know anybody that has Lyme or knows anything about it. Yeah, a little bit, yeah. 10 years ago when I asked that question, I'd get maybe 10% of the people. Now everybody knows, right? Anyway, it mimics many other diseases, and so oftentimes Lyme patients are told that they're crazy because they can't see anything in their blood if the doctors aren't looking for it. And so that's a challenge, right? And so we had a psychiatrist, a pain doctor, a general practitioner that corresponded with the Lyme literate doctor that was in New York. I mean, imagine, my daughter had an entourage around her. So again, I took an active role. I developed these devices, and then all of her doctors saw that she was really responding to it. And really what her body was responding to was nature, because what I did was I harnessed a little piece of nature, and in harnessing full spectrum infrared. And so we were the first company in the country to basically bring this kind of technology to mainstream America, because back then, it was in the healthcare area, infrared was only being used by sports medicine doctors to basically get players their pain thresholds down and also get them to heal faster so they can get back on the field. So that was kind of the impetus then. Okay, so as a device developer, I always ask the question, what if? As an inventor, I ask the question, what if? What if the world was different in this way? What if I made this device and it made a change? And so I just want to give you guys a feel. The next couple of slides, in particular this one, is chock filled with imagery. So you can get a feel for how important just sunlight is to us. And so we're going to touch on this because there are a lot of other elements of primal healing that I'd like to cover today that I think are important, because it's not expensive to go out in the sun if you know when to do it, so you can use it as in your benefit, towards your benefit. So I hope this will
What
come
if
up.
I
There we
told
go.
you there was a fruit or a vegetable out there
We may
that if
need to
you
raise the
ate it
volume a
3
little bit.
times a week, it could lower the possibilities
Thank you.
by 40% of you ever contracting any of the top 5 chronic diseases: heart disease, diabetes, neurological disorders
That's
like
my voice,
dementia,
by the way.
respiratory challenges like pneumonia, even cancer. Would you buy it? Would you eat it? What if I told you there was a hack, and if you increase that frequency of the hack by 5 to 7 days a week, it would lower the possibilities of you contracting any of the above by close to 80%? Dial it in even more. It would lower the risk of dementia by 66%, the risk of sudden death by 63%, the risk of death from heart disease by 50%, lower the risk of hypertension by 46%, and lower the risk of all causes of mortality by 40%. Would you try it then? Would you buy it? Would you tell your children and friends about it? What if the same natural remedy could lower pain thresholds, improve blood circulation, increase your metabolism, and enhance weight loss, improve your body's ability to potentiate food, supplements, and even need be medications? At the same time, it could help rebalance your terrain, improve your sleep, shift your autonomic nervous system to parasympathetic, and that's the short list. Would you go for it? What I'm describing isn't a fruit or a vegetable or a device per se. It's harnessing the power of sun energy, specifically full spectrum infrared frequencies, to create a primal healing foundation for sustainable, optimal health.
What's getting in the way of us healing? Right? Like, I always ask that question because, we always think that it's something outside. But maybe we should look within a little bit to understand that we own our health care. If I asked my parents who took care of them, they'd say Dr. Johnson did, or some other doctor was responsible for their health care. In my generation, it was kind of mixed. The younger generation, probably Jean's daughters and so forth, that, Dad, I'm in charge of my health care. And that's really a big message here because we've all experienced a lot of things in our lives. And certainly, the challenge that we're having with healthcare, you can outsource your healthcare, and certainly there's a lot of great health providers out there. But it's really a good idea that we understand what our healthcare, what things are available to us, and that's one of the great features of this convention. Because you're going to meet amazing vendors downstairs and really great people with great minds and great applications and things that they found in their bliss or their lives that they can bring to you. So I urge you all to listen to other speakers and certainly check other booths out. So what's getting in the way? Right now, it's the clicker because it's not working. We have a clicker problem, sir. Warren? Tower to Warren, we have a clicker problem. Okay, there we go. So what's interesting about this slide is that basically I listed just a few things, and we'll go over them together. The toxic environment, the water, the food, the air we breathe, and the lack of sunlight is really important. These are just primal elements. And so later on in this presentation, there's a favorite slide of mine about the space that we create in our homes just to create a healthy environment because we spend so much time in our homes. People are homeschooling their kids, that's a big piece. But certainly, if you're sleeping 5 or 6 hours a day, that's a big piece. And so we can control the air quality, we can control the water quality, and certainly if we're picky about the foods that we eat, these are very primal elements that will affect our genetics. The modern term is called epigenetics. And so we're born with genetics. We can't change that. But we can influence those genetics, which is basically our blueprint of health, by the foods that we eat and the air that we breathe and all these things. And so we can turn recessive genes on that we may never have seen in our lifetime, creating a symptom of some kind. Or we can turn them off the same way. So I just want to point out to you the things that we have control over. and the things that we don't have. We don't have control over our genetics, but we do have control over what we put in our mouths, okay? And you're a dietitian, so you clearly know that. All right. There's a book, and I'll show it a little later on, that's written by a pretty famous author and a documentarian named Darren Olien. He created a 5-part series with Zac Efron on Netflix and won a whole bunch of awards, where he went around the world checking out all different situations about health, blue zones and this and that. And he wrote a book called Fatal Conveniences. And the book speaks to the kinds of chemicals that we just take for granted that are in our homes that we use because we depend on the FDA and the various different food agencies and the EPA to make sure that we're all healthy. But as we become to learn, some of those agencies aren't really our friends as much as we'd like them to be. That's why I keep saying to you all that we have to take charge of our health care and the information to make sure that we're healthy and we live a vibrant life. And the same thing for our kids. We teach them the same way. Okay, so we'll learn a little bit more about fatal conveniences. As we know, health care or sick care in America, there is a concept of reductionism, and everybody's kind of searching for the one thing, the single root cause of their challenge. Well, the body's pretty complex, and particularly if you have a chronic ailment, it gets even a little bit more complex. But the solutions to getting back to good health aren't that complex, particularly if you look at it from a sort of a baseline primal way of healing. Good food, good air, good water, an ample amount of sunlight, touching the earth, things that aren't all that expensive if you kind of think about it a little bit. Then again, I talked about epigenetics. We get resistance from the negative Nancys. Anybody have negative? Is anyone here by the name of Nancy? Okay. Because not all Nancys are negative, okay? Yeah, anyway, so if you're okay, yeah, give us a negative guy's name, but we'll consider that next time. But today we're going to talk about the resistance we get from negative Nancys. There's people in our lives that, you want to move forward and they just want to kind of hold you back a little bit. And it's not that they're doing it on purpose. They're just maybe not resonating on the same wavelength as you guys are. And so that is what I call resistance. And there's a great book that I'm reading now called The War of Art. And it's basically, the whole book is about the resistances, like identifying the resistances. And it seems kind of funny, but once you kind of figure them out, then you can maneuver around them so you can stay focused on the things that are important in your life. Okay, limiting beliefs. Anybody have limiting beliefs in the room? Yeah, okay. Well, it's kind of interesting. About 6 months ago, we released a new product for us, which is a cold immersion or a cold plunge. We call it TheraFrost. Everything in my world is kind of Thera something for therapy. And what I experienced, and we actually launched it 2 years ago at this conference, and we were kind of a showcase. Robin was sweet enough to put out to the Austin community, bring your bathing suits. We had 100 people plunging into 40-degree water, okay, over the weekend, 2 days. And it was a very interesting experience for me because one of my sayings, and I'll close with this, but I'll tell you now, is notice what you notice. So I was standing back noticing these people, the excitement. So 39% of the people, so about 39 or 40 people over 2 days, were brand new. They never went into cold water before. How many here have actually plunged or done cold immersion? Wow, I love that. Fantastic.
Only because of you.
Huh?
It said I went in the ocean as a kid in Oregon until I got numb. Does that count?
Yeah, it definitely counts. Okay. All right. Well, besides the excitement around cold plunging, what I was focusing on were the newbies, that 39 people that went in for the first time. Some of them just put their toe in the water, and when they did, they said, oh, no, there's no way, okay? And then some of them just took the dive. And I thought that was pretty interesting. But usually it's the first minute that your mind, and maybe everybody here can appreciate that, because when we're taught at a very early age that we shouldn't put our hands on the stove because we're going to get burned, right? And we should wear clothes when we go out in the wintertime to play in the snow because otherwise we'll get frostbitten or something like that, right? So we're kind of taught by our parents not to do all those things. We're exposed that way. And so we grow up being somewhat fearful. That's what we call limiting belief. Because these 39 people that went in for the first time, they broke through that limiting belief. They experienced in 1 to 3 minutes, because that was generally the range that they were going in for, a change in them. And when they came out, there was a crowd of people around them just cheering them on. And what they did was they got to understand how powerful the body is in healing. Because that limiting belief actually prevented them from actually understanding how powerful they are, or you all are. And so it's amazing. And you guys, in science, it's a cause and effect. So we do this, or we drop a brick, and it's supposed to hit the floor because of gravity. We're looking for that. When science can't explain why somebody heals from cancer, like by doing natural things, they call it a miracle. That's the explanation. But if we look close enough, and I don't know if any religious people in the room, Old Testament, New Testament, there's chock full of miracles. There's miracles that are going on all around us that we just don't notice. Notice what you notice, right? And so part of today's miracle is hopefully learning some things with me. Anyway, staying compliant is a problem because many people in our fast food Amazon world that we're living in, we expect things to be delivered, the same day you order it from some magical place, probably a drone eventually. And same thing with healthcare. We're supposed to take some pill or bullet, and then all of our worries, all of our health challenges are going to go away, but it kind of doesn't work like that. The body, particularly if you have a chronic ailment, like let's say Lyme disease, because I'm going to talk a little bit more and reference that, it could take maybe 10 years, particularly if you're young, before you even become symptomatic. So your body's accumulating toxins over 10 years, and then all of a sudden there's a shift. It could be emotional. It could be a physical shift that just is that last little stress that actually creates that you become symptomatic. And you look back and you go, what did I do to make that change? And you want to undo that one last straw that broke the camel's back. But again, it doesn't work like that because you've been accumulating toxins and basically getting incrementally sick over 10 years. It was just one little thing that was the tipping point. And it takes a while to actually get back to your health. So limiting beliefs are important, and being compliant is important because if you don't, most of these protocols that you guys are doing, are looking to do, they basically work. Most of them really work. But because we have an unrealistic expectation, it's going to work overnight. After a week or two, we kind of forget about it. And then we go on to the next one and the next one. Or you go back to your doctor and go, I did everything you said, but yet it's not working, but they didn't give it enough time to actually make it work. Do you know that just biochemically, if you were to change your diet from, let's say, paleo to keto or become like a carnivore or something like that, it takes almost 21 days biochemically for your body to shift. So whatever change you're going to make, commit 3 weeks to it and see how your body responds in order for you to get a real reaction. And I think owning it, and that was what I was talking about a little bit earlier, is actually stepping up and owning your health care, different than the little bit older generations that thought that it was someone else's job to take care of your health care or your own health care. Okay. All right, so this is the slide I mentioned about reductionism. So in many of the medical communities, they look for the one root cause, and you probably hear that a lot or read about root causes, but root causes are important, but generally it's not just one thing. It's generally a combination of things. And so it's kind of like peeling an onion. And I'm going to discuss that in a minute about detoxification, because that comes into play. Okay, so can you guys, how many in here, raise your hand if you got a cell phone on you. Okay. Yeah, when I asked that question, I started this 10 years ago when I asked that question. This next slide after this is going to be pretty interesting for most of you, I hope. and I was talking to a medical community, I would ask the question, how many of you doctors have 2 cell phones on you? And I generally got 10 or 20%. So 100 doctors, 20 doctors would raise their hand. Well, how many of you have 1? And everybody would raise their hand. So I don't know if you guys, your cell phones are on right now, but I'm going to show you the next slide is actually the energies that come off of a cell phone. And not many people, it's called an EMF, electromagnetic field. And the thing is about it is that you can't smell that field, you can't taste it, you can't hear it, but yet it exists in nature. And that's part of what I do is I harness subtle energies and I bring them back into your home, into your body through devices that we make so that you can enjoy what our ancestors did. Because when you lived in the days of Buddha, Moses, and who else? Probably Jesus, right? Yeah. We lived in caves, we lived in tents, we lived on the land. We woke up to the sun, not to an alarm clock. And so it's a very different world that we're living in now. And part of our philosophy of our company is to try to bring nature and some of the things that we experienced back in the day, our ancestors, into our modern environment so that we can actually, our bodies can commune with nature the way that they intended to be, so we could be as healthy as nature and our deliverer intended us to be. Okay, so when I started preaching about electromagnetic fields 14 years ago, before it became vogue, so to speak, I had trouble talking to a doctor saying that cell phone and the energy from that cell phone is actually could potentially hurt you. And so I thought, how could I prove to the community out there that EMF or the micro energies from these towers actually exist? And so there is actually a type of photography that they capture auras with. Wait a minute. In the 60s, they call it auras. Today, they call it a biofield. Okay? So I contracted a photographer, and we actually captured what an EMF looks like. And I'm going to show it to you on the next slide. But this one's kind of important because the 2 agencies that control the energies from cell phones and wireless devices is the FTC, the Trade Commission, and the FCC, the Communication Division. And guess how many health-minded people sit on the board that develop or decide how much energy they should dial up into these devices? Anyone want to guess?
0.
Close your eyes and tell me what you see. Okay, that's basically it. And it's scary, right? Because I love this little one over here. I am not a science experiment. You know, between the ages of 0 and 18, your neural pathways aren't formed in your brain as children's and adolescents. And the brain is greatly affected and impaired excuse me, by these invisible frequencies from EMF, and ELF is extreme low frequencies. That's called dirty electricity, and RF signals is radio signals. So again, all these exogenous man-made frequencies that never occurred in nature before are affecting our lives and in a bad way, and another big stressor that we have to be all concerned about. So what you see there is the bars of the US and Canada and Australia, and look where the rest of Europe is. So are Americans and Canadians and Australians so super powerful that we can actually withstand the influences of EMF? Probably not. The simple answer is down here in the corner. Earthing, touching the earth, will kind of neutralize the effects of all these exogenous frequencies. But I'm living in South Florida, and I basically walk barefoot all day. But here, maybe in Austin, or if you live up north in the colder parts of the world, you may not have that luxury of actually hugging. I'm a tree hugger too, by the way. How many people hug trees here? Good going. Okay, yeah, it's amazing. Okay, so that's what an EMF looks like. And let me get up here for a minute so you can get a closer view. Right down here, that's your cell phone. So imagine a room with 100 doctors or 200 doctors, 20% with cell phones. The rooms are maybe this size or a little bit bigger. And these energies are coming off of one cell phone. Imagine 200 cell phones, what this room is like right now with those energies swirling around. You don't think that affects the way that your brain works? And the way that your brain sends signals to your body to have all your organs working properly, and your muscles working properly, and your systems working properly. And so it is one other stressor, but when you add this into all the other stressors in our environment, bad air, bad food, and challenges like that, bad water, then it starts to add up. And I think that explains why the trajectories on a lot of the chronic ailments that we're experiencing in the world today, they're so steep. And with all the research and the money going in, and we know there's more money in not healing and not curing than there is in curing people. But most of the integrated doctors and people that I love, their practices are closed and well sought after because the word gets out fast when you find a doctor that heals you. And there's many in the room here. The Fortunes are one of them right there that heal people, and certainly Jean. And if you're another health provider, Dr. Sean Drake is here. These guys are people that actually heal people, and I surround myself with energy like that. Isn't that amazing, that picture, right? Okay, so we all have pivotal moments, and these are some of mine, but I'd like you guys to consider yours because these are the turns in life when you have a choice of going left or right, and for some reason you go one way, and the difference that may make in your world. So a pivotal moment for me was when my daughter got sick, because when she got sick, my world changed. It changed me in a way that put me 24 years later in a position today to talk to you and create devices that we now are in 17 countries, and we heal tens of thousands of people every day with the things that we do, which is just harnessing nature, right? Providing the things that were given to us, the things that aren't all that expensive, but that we just don't know, people don't know. And that's why I'm so happy to talk to you today, because it's important to understand that most of these things are inexpensive. And it's just a matter of understanding what they do and figuring out how to integrate that into your life so it makes a difference. Okay, so 30 years ago, I discovered infrared. And then about maybe 10 years ago, I discovered the importance of cell voltage. And I'll talk about that in a minute. And then I talked about the subtle energies. So sunlight is a subtle energy, and some of these vibrational things that are out there are, to my world, everything is a vibration and everything is a frequency. And so if you can harness those frequencies, the loving frequencies, and bring them into your life and surround yourselves and your family, it makes a huge difference. And then, again, the primal things that I've been talking about since the beginning today. Okay. So with my daughter, I noticed her challenges were toxicity. And so then I started to do a deep dive, and I started to realize that there is a correlation between toxicity and inflammation. And most of us, if you don't have to be chronic, but even today, most of us are symptomatic, have any kind of expression of symptom because they're inflamed, okay? And so if you could lower toxicity, then you can lower inflammation. And if you can lower inflammation, then you can lower symptoms. So that was very revelating for me 25 years ago, because I had a challenge. My oldest child was very symptomatic. And my goal was to do two things when I started my company, Therasage. One was to develop the best devices in the world that will harness infrared frequencies. Full spectrum frequencies is what I focus on. Bring them to the world. And hopefully put myself in a position where I will meet the top minds in Lyme disease and get inspired by any of them, so that I could learn a little more, help my daughter help herself, because it's her responsibility. Her healthcare is her responsibility, and then carry on that way. And so as a company, philosophically, I want to heal everybody in the room here, but more important to healing you, I want to consider having you change your habits a little bit to healthier habits, shed some of those limiting beliefs, and then hopefully influence your kids, and they'll influence their kids. So I'm looking for the multi-generational plan here, not the no plan, okay? We got that? All right, so toxicity, inflammation, and symptoms are important. And by lowering inflammation for my daughter, it didn't cure her Lyme disease, and the co-infections that lived with the Lyme disease. What it did was brought her a lot of her life back, because as an adolescent, you know, she was a very young, vibrant woman, very smart and really beautiful. And so she was watching, she wanted to be social, but she couldn't because of her chronic challenge. She wore an armband around her PICC line because at one point we were injecting pharmaceuticals through her veins because she couldn't orally take them anymore because they ripped up her gut. So even though I'm a naturopath, the only acceptable forms of protocols for Lyme back then were pretty caustic chemicals that were good for one thing, but they hurt another thing. And so we're taking the natural approach. And of course, as it comes to Lyme, there's so much greater news out there and research that's being done and protocols that are being done. So any of you here, categorically, if you have Lyme or you have a challenge with Lyme or have someone that has a challenge with Lyme, just have them contact our free coaching service at Therasage. And I've got a whole staff of medical advisors that can get you guys and your families and friends on the road to recovery. Okay. So I want to talk about polarity for a minute or two. The father of body voltage is a doctor by the name of Jerry Tennant. He's actually in Dallas, in Texas. He's an MD, and he basically healed himself because they gave him only 6 months to live. They couldn't figure out what was wrong with him. And he said, if I've got 6 months to live, I'm just going to figure out how to fix myself. And what he discovered was that every cell is like a little battery. And it's got like a positive and negative charge. And that most of us, when the battery in our bodies, the battery in your cell, doesn't have the right amount of charge or voltage, then it can't function properly. That's called methylation. And if it can't function, then your immune system won't be able to operate properly, and you can't fight off disease. And so he discovered that there are many reasons, and one of the things that is relevant is what's called polarity. So I'm going to kind of get a little nerdy here about science, but if you take a rechargeable battery, let's say a AA battery, and you put in those chargers, you know, like it turns the charger. Anybody recharge a battery here that you know that? So yeah. So it turns, the charger is red, and then you put the battery in, and then over 10 or 15 minutes, it turns green, right? Well, if that battery drains down to no charge, then the polarity on the battery flips. So the positive charge in the battery is now negative, and the negative is positive. Same thing for the cell. If the cell battery drains down and the polarity flips, when you go to charge that rechargeable battery, the light will be red, the light will turn green, and then when you put in your flashlight, it won't work, because when the polarity is flipped, then the battery won't charge. And that's a challenge that I discovered with Dr. Tennant's work that I think is very relevant to everyone here, because the reason why a lot of us are sick is because our cells aren't powered enough to actually create that immune response and proper cell activity. And this became so important to me that I actually changed my protocol, the sequencing in my protocol. And now what I do is check my patient's polarity first. I actually flip the polarity to be positive, so I make sure that their cells can charge. Then I charge them up with earth energy, which could be the earth, it could be sun, or it could be a microcurrent device. Now I know that the cell is ready to actually heal and do what it's supposed to do. Absent that, what we're seeing in clinic is our results are 20 to 30% better when we actually put this one little step in by charging their batteries, their cell batteries beforehand. So this is Dr. Jerry Tennant. Well, I hope it will be right there. And these are very interesting things: infection, dental profile, toxicity, emotions, dehydration, scars. They may all sound familiar to you, but these are some of this is the small list that Jerry came up with why our polarities are off. And one that's really interesting to me is the dental, and Gene can speak much better than I, so if I had more time, I'd invite you up here.
I would just interject, yeah, Jerry had a root canal on the upper right, left first molar, and that was creating what we call an interference field. So it's blocking that voltage, because each tooth is on a meridian, so that was his chief complaint, and he found that out from his dogs, because his dogs would lay on him, and they would go towards his face, and so he actually figured it out.
Amazing, right? Just noticing what you notice, right? Okay, so this is the short list that Jerry came up with. What I found really interesting about all of his work, and even the fact that he's helped himself, he's created devices that are pretty interesting that basically will flip the polarity and also charge you up. And he's probably the father of modern theories as it comes to body voltage, and he's written a few books on it, so it might be pretty interesting for you guys to learn about a little bit more about it. But this became so important to me, and in the way that I've seen the way that we affect people's health, because you can do an intervention, but if the body isn't ready for it, then it won't hold on to it, okay? All right, so the next thing I want to talk about briefly is a healthy home, and that's to create an environment where basically you're safe, right? And so can anybody guess the number one chemical in your house that is the worst one? Go ahead.
Laundry stuff.
Which one?
Laundry detergent?
Laundry detergent. Are you like one of those guys like Elvis planted in the audience that knows all the answers? Or?
I've never seen it before in my life.
Okay. Right. Laundry detergent. So why would laundry detergent be like the worst chemical ever, right? It's got color that's not real. It's got a fragrance that's going into your threads of your clothing, right? So your clothing smells really great. But then you put your T-shirt on or your jeans on or your underwear on, and those chemicals that are making your clothing clean are also leaching through your skin into your bloodstream. So again, we're expecting the agencies to protect us, so we're now learning today that we have to protect ourselves. Yes. The worst aisle for me isn't actually the laundry detergent. The worst one for me is the cereals, the cereal aisle. I can't get through the cereal aisle. Like the colors there just knock me out. And the idea that kids, like everyone's being attracted to the fruity this and the fruity that. And I mean, that's why we use a food service that delivers our food. I can't go down that aisle anymore. Okay, anyway, I thought that this was an important slide for you guys to know, because these are, again, changes that we can make in our home. Better ways to sleep, like sleeping is important, having EMF free, so those wavelengths that we talked about earlier aren't affecting your brain while you're sleeping, so you don't get that restorative sleep that you really need to repair. The body needs to repair from the night before or the day before, right? Being out in the environment and out and about. So what we do is, if you can get a healthy home, at least you know for 6, 7, 8 hours a day, you're at a place that actually you can kind of recharge your batteries, and you know that things are good. So when you walk outside, you can fight off the environment a little bit better. Anyway, and there's a great guy downstairs called Got Mold. Mold is a big problem here. It's not just the coastal cities anymore. And you get a Lyme patient that gets influenced by mold disease, by mold influence or mold toxicity, and they go from basically managing their healthcare to kind of being bedridden almost overnight. So the impact of mold is very important for us to know. And again, these are very easy things for us to fix. And it's not a one and done deal. I'm in South Florida, and I'm testing my home every 6 months, because it lives, there are thousands of variations of mold, but there's only like tens of variations that are actually bad for us. So the idea that you can find out which ones they are and fix them is really important for all of us, particularly for the kids.
Real quick, where do you get a mold test for your house?
What, I'm sorry?
How do you get a mold test on your house?
Get a kit? Are you saying a mold kit? Yeah, well, there's a guy downstairs named Jason Earl who has a company called Got Mold, and he has a device that basically tests the air, and it will tell you, and then you send this little container that grabs it like a filter, and then you send it in, and it gets, like, you get a lab report, and that tells you exactly what kind of mold you got. And then once you know that, of course, you got to fix the leak, and you have to fix wherever the mold is coming from, but then you fix your house, and then you can kind of live mold-free. In my house, when we tested my house, I had 11 variations of mold, but only 3 of them were bad, and of course 2 of them were in my bedroom. Okay? So if you don't know, then you don't know what to fix, so that's what's important. There are actually guys named building biologists that will come in and fix your house from EMF. Okay, so negative ions is basically the earth charge, and they happen in nature when running water moves over land. So that would be Niagara Falls would be one of the greatest places in the world for negative ions. But you don't have to do that. You can just kick your shoes off and go in the sand or hug an oak tree, like we said, or a palm tree. And that will bring anything rooted into the ground is going to bring the earth charge into your body. It's really super powerful. Again, for the charge, here we go. So here's some ideas. The grounding effect, the earth charge, improves cellular communication. How many of you guys here, this is where I'm going to get personal, how many of you guys here sing in the shower? I knew you would, Sean. Okay. Do any of you have an idea why you sing in the shower? Go ahead.
Water makes you happy. I don't know what it is. Just water.
There's really great acoustics.
Acoustics, okay.
Because secretly I wanted to be a rock star.
I love that. I don't think you should be secret about it. Come on stage unless. So the physiological reason why we sing in the shower is because when the water comes through the shower head, the friction actually liberates or creates negative ions, which is just like the earth charge. It's just like what happens after heavy rain. When the water comes through the clouds in the atmosphere, the friction actually is releasing these electrons. And because we live in controlled environments, like our houses have air conditioning or heating or apartments, and we're not touching the earth anymore, we're basically being starved from these negative ions, the earth charge from our body. So when you sing in the shower, what's happening is those electrons, those negative ions are now all around you because they're coming from the shower head, and your body is soaking them in like a sponge. And what they do is they improve cellular communication and well-being. So basically that means you get happy, and when you're happy, you sing. Okay, so that's one of the main reasons why people sing in the shower. Of course, for me, when I sing in the shower, my voice is so bad that I don't need an exterminator. All the bugs, all the rodents go next door. So anyway, I met this guy on a podcast. He actually interviewed me, and then I wound up interviewing him because when I heard his backstory, it was so important to me. Him and his wife, they're in their 40s, and their health was failing. They lived in Europe. They moved to Spain. They quit their high-powered executive jobs that were really stressful, and they took a holiday for 2 weeks. And the second day of their holiday, they were about maybe an hour walk from their hotel room, and they decided they were going to, rather than taking a taxi, I don't know if they had Ubers there, they decided that they were going to walk back. And they were really extremely tired, but what they did that day was they took their shoes off. They walked back barefoot. When they got back to the hotel, they were completely energized, right? They looked at each other and go, wow, this is kind of strange. We were so tired we couldn't hardly move, and now we're energized. The next day they woke up and they looked at each other, let's not wear our shoes for the rest of the holiday, which they did, which turned into a 2-year process. They walked 6,000 miles from Spain to Poland and back, right? After 2.5 months, they had absolutely no health challenges at all. The power of the healing of the earth and the body. That's the story. Pretty amazing, right? Okay, the art of healing. Sequencing is so important, and what I learned was you can do all the right things, but if you don't do them in the right order, then it can make a huge difference. Everybody buys vitamins and supplements, and they say on the label, take 2 of this in the morning and 2 at night. But how do you know that that's what your body needs? Maybe your body needs 3. Maybe your body needs 5, right? So those healthcare agencies, those supplement companies, they give suggested doses, right? And they tell you suggestions at when it might be best for you. But what we've seen in clinic is if you change the order that you do things, it makes all the difference in the sequencing makes a difference in the outcome. And the dosing makes a difference in the outcome. So again, back to earlier, many of these supplements and protocols work. You just have to tweak them so they work for your body. Okay, that's the key. Okay, so now we're going to focus a little bit on what I'm a specialist about, which is infrared. The next is a picture of me before I started researching infrared. Okay, so that's before. This is a little bit after. And biophoton modulation is kind of the broad topic, but basically I'm talking about sunlight. This is the infrared spectrum right here. It's near, mid, and far. And this is where infrared sits in all the wavelengths that come from the sun as they hit the Earth. So as I said earlier, that azimuth, so as the Earth is turning, these wavelengths are now moving across the meridians of the planet. And so what's important to know, ultraviolet is for basically the nurturing frequencies. Vitamin D changes the pH in your blood. And infrared is the healing frequencies. We focused on healing. So our whole company, everything we make, is basically harnessing full spectrum infrared frequencies, the way the nature and the sun delivers it to the planet. And we put it in devices so you can get them into your home. Okay. Anybody in the room from the FDA? I have to ask the question.
But if I was.
No. You got to raise your hand, girl. So,
No, I am not.
okay, good. The reason why I'm saying that is because here's kind of a list of the things that, just a short list. There's pages and pages of ways that infrared can help you. But these three, chronic pain, improving circulation, rest and relaxation, are the three things that I can legally talk about according to FDA. Therasage, our company, we've gone through a lot of the credentialing, FDA credentialing, because our first foray into healthcare was teaching doctors how to use our devices. And if I was a doctor and I had my license on the line, essentially, I want to make sure that the devices that I'm recommending are FDA listed. And so we took that very expensive and long route to get our devices listed as medical devices. So most of our devices are class 2 medical. Most of the other people in red light and the infrared area, they are not. And they're not doing anything illegal. They just don't have to be. We just took the highest position as far as being able to go medical and also go to the mainstream public, to you guys. But just take a look at all the things that infrared can influence you. Earlier you saw that little video, and it kind of gives you some imagery about it. Detoxification is one of the big things that we all need these days because our environment is so toxic. And so what we've done is we've kind of dialed in not just the best ways to detoxify, but naturally, but also the protocols around that. So the devices and the protocol is the way you put it together. It's not expensive. And what infrared will do is mobilize the toxins in your body. That vibration will mobilize that toxin. But it's not good enough to mobilize. You actually have to get it out of your body. And so we actually use binders as a protocol, in our protocol, which is like a biosponge, just to collect the poisons and help your body eliminate them. Infrared sauna. How many of you guys have had some experience with infrared saunas? Pretty good, right? The difference between infrared and convection heat, which would be a hot rock sauna or a steam room, is the way that the heat comes in. So convection heat heats the ambient air that heats your skin up. You have to have a high temperature in order for it to get through your skin to start to sweat. Infrared goes right through your skin and basically is radiant heat. And so it doesn't need to be a high heat in order for you to be able to get the enjoyment and the detoxification. It works on different principles. Infrared is way more efficient, both for the expense of the device. Our devices uses 1 kilowatt of power, which costs 7.5 cents in Florida to run that device for an hour. Imagine that, right? So drinking water, using binder, doing sauna every day. Earlier you heard me say, what if? The science on doing it 3 times a week, it's amazing at how much a device. There's only 2 devices that I know so far that can actually influence your body in a positive way in such a short time. One is sauna, and the other is cold plunge. So we're actually doing that, what's called contrast therapy, doing one and the other back and forth to stimulate the body to actually create stem cells, exosomes, regeneration, increase your telomere, and basically create optimal health. You like that, right? Yeah. Okay. These are the areas that are important because we like to stack our hacks. So using different infrared and different devices together can actually improve your performance. So if you combine infrared with aromatherapy, with guided meditation, with ozone devices, these things will make a difference and change. And if all around the sauna, so we created a hub of a wagon wheel, that's the sauna, and then all of these different hacks that can make a difference. So this is a shot that you guys may want to take a picture of. These are all the hacks that you can combine with your sauna in order for you to just dial up your optimal experience. I'm running out of time, so I'm just going to spend another minute or two. This is one of my favorite hacks.
2 seconds.
Oh,
Okay.
sorry.
We were so close. Yeah, we were so close.
Okay, everybody ready?
Thank you.
Okay. And this is one of my favorite hacks, the cold plunge and the sauna. We're launching a learning platform next month, so you guys check out Thera Optimal Health. Please stay tuned for that. And now I'm going to leave you with just one more kind of fun thing, I hope. Okay, Jennifer Cohen wrote a book called Better, Bolder, Best. Be bold. So she is just an amazing influencer. And she was just invited to Israel and did an interview with the president of Israel, which was just amazing. She's a podcast. She's had just amazing people on it, so I would have you look at it, her podcast. But part of being bold actually you have to step out. Okay, now, when my daughter was little, we had a little game, and we had a favorite song. I'm going to play it for you now because I hope it's inspirational to you all, so you understand how powerful you are and also how much change we can make. So it's a song, if it works. So just listen to the lyric.
If you wanna sing out, sing out. If you wanna be free, be free. There's a million things to be. You know that there are. If you wanna live high, live high. If you wanna live low, live low. There's a million ways to go. You know that there are. You can do what you want. The opportunity's on. And if you find the new way, you can do it today. You can make it all true. And you can make it undo. You see, you only need to know. If you wanna say yes, say yes. If you wanna say no, say no. There's a million ways to go. You know that there are. You know that there are.
How about that, right? You want to sing out? Okay. Well, this is me somewhere. There we go. Thank you all for having me. I hope you enjoy your holiday.